Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining me today is a marketing and technology luminary, Tom Edwards. Tom is a highly decorated and respected futurist, and I'm very excited to dive in with him today about the intersection of technology and consumer behavior. He has a long list of accolades, including being recognized as a 2020 Global OnCon Icon Top 50 Marketer Award winner. This award was peer-driven out of 250 nominees globally. He was also recognized 2 years in a row as the Professional of the Year for Marketing in Emerging Technology by Strathmore Worldwide. Tom was selected from 4 finalists for his Tech Titan Technology Advocate Award, and he won the OnCon Icon Marketing Trailblazer for his AI work. And Advertising Age recognized Tom as a Marketing Technology Trailblazer. His talks are incredibly captivating, filled with pop culture references to make highly complex topics much easier to understand, and he finds points of connection through topics such as gaming, everyday behaviors tied to Gen Z, and how to connect trends to creating value for businesses. So please join me now with the very compelling Tom Edwards. Well, hello, Tom Edwards. Thank you for joining me on Virtually Speaking. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great today, Chris. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited that we're here. I've known you for a long time, and I've really wanted you on the show for a while. And I know that you have so many great things you can share with the business owner and having to do with marketing, but also having to do with really basically consumer behavior and how do we connect with consumers? What marketing tools are we using in advertising? And you're going to tell us the trends that are happening, that you're working with the biggest companies on the planet with their search engines, with their data, with their AI, all of this technology. And it's so important to know right now because it's changing exponentially, it's changing fast, it's changing dramatically. And now with COVID, I think it's changing even more so, right?
It really is, Chris. I mean, you definitely hit the nail on the head. Everybody's looking at, what's next? We've gone through this stage of disruption. Now, how can we get back to business as usual? And how can we evolve experiences, as we continue to move from desktop and mobile into voice and vision and touch and all of these other kind of interfaces? How do organizations and brands especially stay relevant? So that's a lot of where I focus, is kind of that intersection between consumer behavior and emerging technology.
Right. And you said creating experiences. I've heard you say that before, obviously. That's something that you do, but tell everybody a little bit about what that means, because it's really combining a lot of different things together, coming together, a convergence of technologies, right?
Chris, it really is. I used to talk a lot about how disruption was the new normal. Now it's about the convergence. So it's about this acceleration, this exponential acceleration. It's not just about a single technology. It's not just about augmented reality or artificial intelligence, but how all of these things are seamlessly flowing together to create new paths forward for us to all continue to interact and experience kind of a connection between the digital and physical world. And that's really the basis for a lot of my talk. I find that people, when you talk about things that are complex, specifically around AI or around robotics or any of these other kind of heavy tech topics, it's really helpful to have kind of a starting point that everybody can understand, everybody can associate with. Everybody's seen a Pixar movie, or they possibly played at Fortnite with their kids, or they've seen The Matrix or something along those lines. So
you look like you're in The Matrix right now, by the way.
Well, I mean, somebody has to keep an eye on the machines. I mean, why not? Like, let's just be real about it here. So
I love the green lighting and the setup there, and you have the double keyboards. You're like the Rick Wakeman of computer guys.
Yeah, because one's just never enough. So I think there are like 6 around the whole area here. So
do you ever play 2 at the same time, kind of like a keyboardist? I'm just kidding. And you've won a lot of awards, which I also want to make sure, I remind people of. I know that when it comes to marketing and when it comes to advertising, when it comes to people in this world, there's not a lot of awards out there, but it seems like you've won every single one over these last few years. You were the Advertising Age Marketing Technology Trailblazer of the Year. You were one of the top 50 global marketing people by OnCon, said that. and there's so many others, Professional of the Year for Marketing and Emerging Technology. So it's interesting to talk to a guy who's won all these awards. How do you win all these awards? Is it because the work you've done has made these clients of yours a lot of money, or how do they figure out who the best marketing guy is out there in the world right now in using, I guess, all of these technologies?
Chris, it's a great question. I think a lot of it started back in 2007 when I started a blog, Blackfin 360. And since then, I've published around 600 articles, 600 posts, recorded a lot of video content over the years. And that kind of repository, millions of views, that repository, you always can see what I'm working on. So when I'm processing a new strategy or I'm thinking about alignment of a trend or something, I'm normally writing about it or speaking about it. And then that is sent on to the next prospective organization or entity. And I've worked with everyone from Google to Apple to Facebook to GlaxoSmithKline to, you name it, hundreds of entities across, basically all industries. So it's General Motors, Ford, we're joking about that earlier, but part of it is being able to basically articulate whatever's coming, but also applying it to how business is going to evolve. And from an award standpoint, you have to have kind of a combination of the case study, but also kind of the amplification tied to whatever the topic may be. For Tech Titans, that was last year here in Dallas. Mm-hmm. That's one of the ones I'm really proud of. That was a very difficult, it was a field of 4 individuals, all with incredible credentials. And what it really came down to was my original content that kind of pulled it through, as well as some of the actual practical application of using AI to enhance, a business. So I think that's a key part of it.
That's really cool. And you mentioned these big companies you're talking about. One of the most interesting conversations you and I ever had, I remember, was you telling me kind of the fact that you're working with, Google and their Google Assistant and Alexa with Amazon and kind of the comparisons there. And then, you've worked with Apple and Siri. So tell everybody what you do when you work with these companies and what all that means and what's going on. Also tell us with that AI, with each of their versions of AI. It seems like they're competing with each other and they're all getting much better.
It is true. And I think it all comes down to this idea of, again, how experiences are going to evolve. Okay. And right now, everything's primarily been desktop and mobile. You've seen the rise of social media, the shift towards private messaging. You're seeing now the kind of use of the camera and how the lens is like with Gen Z, and we can touch on that as well. Mm-hmm. But I think when it comes back to voice-based assistants, I look at kind of mapping different levels of autonomy, because ultimately we're moving from the Internet of Things to autonomous things. That's really where a lot of this is moving. We're moving to the idea to where your virtual assistant, regardless of which one you pick, is eventually going to become your proxy. So that it's going to represent you. It's going to become your core preference center. And those experiences are moving into the center of phones. If you look at Google's phones, you've got Google Assistant now that's in the center of the phone. It's able to process things on device very quickly, and it's tied to the Google Knowledge Graph. And we talked about how all of these things are connected. With Amazon, their specific ecosystem is amazing as well. And you've kind of have an arms race that's happening between Amazon, Google, and Apple. Apple, you look back to 2008, the original iPhone launched in 2007, and people talk about that as transformational innovation. But the real innovation was in 2008 with the App Store. Now you've had 180 billion apps that have been downloaded. So Apple is heavily invested in making sure that those apps stay relevant on your phone. Yeah. Whereas Google and Alexa want to move past the application and move towards having the assistant in the center.
You have to stop saying Google, because my Google Pixel is turning on every time and it wants me to tell it what to do because it's listening for the word Google.
It is. And that's why I haven't said the Amazon wake word yet either, because mine's doing the same thing. So.
Sorry. So continue. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, that's honestly.
But they're moving away from the apps, you said?
Yeah, that's correct, because Apple has always been around third-party applications. That's how you personalize your phone. That's how you're able to do the things that you're able to do. And their entire ecosystem and a lot of how they monetize is driven through the applications. Where if you think about Google and Amazon, Google wants to stitch together various apps. They don't care as much about the applications. They care about connecting the service. Like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to rent a car? How can our assistant take you through that entire process where I already understand, Chris, your preferences when you travel? And that's simply going to seamlessly execute on your behalf and actually do the entire reservation. They actually showed that at I/O a year or so ago. So it was amazing technology to see.
Wow, and I just was reading up on the Pixel 5, which I am planning on getting. My friends all want me to get the iPhone, and I keep looking into what I'm going to lose if I go to the iPhone. And it's like there's so many things on my Pixel phone that I don't want to lose, so I'm not willing to give it up. And on the new phone, there's this cool thing where you can put your assistant on hold for you, and then it lets you know when somebody's come back. So the hold music, please hold, all of that stuff. You can go and do other stuff, and it'll let you know, oh, somebody's now ready to speak to you. And the fact that it's screening all the calls now for you automatically, if you want, you can push screen and it gives the person a message. Like, just like you're saying, just like doing things for you, making your life easier, and really helping you not waste time. And that's amazing. But tell me a little bit more about, like, a lot of people watching this are business owners. They're either executives or they are in the managing side of things. They're managers. They're different types of C-suite people. And they're all over the place as leaders. So how do leaders need to think about the future right now with all this consumer-facing stuff? Like, in other words, what do we need to take advantage of, and what's coming that we should be getting excited about?
Yeah, and when I sit down and we workshop and we whiteboard and we talk about these things, it's less about, oh, there's a shiny new technology, how can I plug that in? It always starts with the core business objectives. What are you ultimately trying to accomplish? Where are you currently at today in your journey, and how can you map a roadmap forward? I'll normally walk them through an entire trend presentation covering a multitude of different ways in which you could look at the impact of data specifically tied to search, the role that AI plays, or robotic process information to make things more efficient internally, or processing of information, all the way through to how that applies to digital. But for me, when I think about it, and I think about like the fundamentals of marketing, you've got what were called the 4 Ps in the 60s: product, price, place, promotion. As we move forward, I kind of see 4 new Ps. It's plan, which is planning for the use of data and information. It's predictive, understanding how predictive algorithms can help drive the business forward. So understanding, using information, and it's not just about things that have happened in the past, but using systems to actually predict what's going to happen. It's about understanding proxy. The third is proxy. That's just what we were talking about with the virtual assistant. Understanding the role that voice-based, whether that's chatbots, whether that's virtual assistant, digital humans, all the way to emotive robots in Westworld. You've got this continuum of robotics. That's a piece of it. And ultimately, it's pervasive. It's designing beyond desktop and mobile to where your entire physical space can become digitized. Understanding the role that 5G is going to play in terms of connectivity. That's a foundational element. Understanding that the world around us is going to be mapped to where it becomes your physical world becomes a digital overlay, and that your virtual assistant is going to be at the center, kind of driving and dictating what those experiences actually are going to be. So as a business, it's really, step one, it's foundational, it's tied to data. So data is oil for AI. That's how algorithms learn. So you look at machine learning, human coded algorithms, deep learning, the systems are training themselves, but it all starts with the information and the data sets that are actually there. So as a business, for me, when I look at applying emerging technology, I look at the behavior associated with it, and then how can that be applied to whatever the core business goals actually are.
Okay. So, but what about the small business owner or the people who own businesses or are running businesses that are maybe not that small and they're more just like a medium-sized business? What do they need to be looking at right now? Because obviously this is about getting the consumers to be our customers and engaging with them. Is there something that people should be all doing that you find most people aren't doing yet?
Absolutely. There's been so much emphasis over the past few years around content marketing. And, then it's moved into kind of contextual marketing. When you look at, I really like to step back and I like to look at, specific behaviors tied to Gen Z. Gen Z was born 1996 to 2010. They're the first mobile first generation. They learned to swipe before they learned to speak. And their behaviors are kind of dictating how experiences are evolving.
Mm-hmm.
For them, it's about how can I enable their creativity, enable their experiences. Like that's an incredibly important piece. And that then translates into why, you look at Snap with AR and the amount of actual shares and interactions that happen there, 275 million a day. So you start getting into that, like understanding the behavioral side of it. But also for the small business too, it starts with understanding that it's going to be moving beyond just the consumer in the center and also to where systems are going to be supporting as well. So understanding like how your business shows up online is incredibly important, because it's not just about traditional search engine optimization anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about, past where you can do a regression test and like test your different keywords and do all this other stuff. Because you have AI being applied to how the search rankings actually work, you have to make sure that your data is structured online to where you're discoverable. Simple things like having an Alexa-based skill or being a part of a Google Assistant action to where you're present in these new kind of ecosystems as they're moving forward, because they're a little bit of the Wild West. So making sure that you're testing as an organization, but at the end of the day, it also comes back to, is that creating value for you? So for a small business, I look at it kind of a 70-20-10 approach. You should invest 70% of your funds in marketing that definitively is measurable and it's going to drive a return for you. 20% in kind of new and emerging areas to where you can still equate value. And it may not be a hard metric. It may be something like engagement rates or things like that. And then 10% on just experimental that can possibly connect to your business moving forward. So you take all those things together, it's hard to distill without knowing or understanding the nuance of that specific business. But there are some pieces there that you can really begin to apply, a path forward.
Wow. Okay. So that's pretty cool. So in other words, we have to imagine that the customers are going to, we can get a lot more customers than we used to by using the web, mm-hmm. by using search. We can connect to a whole bunch more people than just the immediate people driving down the street and looking at a billboard or looking in the white page or the yellow pages. It's about getting other people to come in who weren't going to be coming in the past. I think people are still thinking about marketing and thinking about business the way they've been thinking about it their whole lives. And it sounds like the Gen X people and the Gen Y people especially are the ones who are like really like understanding that things are changing. But anybody who's older than Gen X is kind of like maybe clueless in a lot of ways as to what's going on. And how do you convince them? How do you show them that this is what they need to do?
It's less about showing and it's more about understanding if a current generational cohort, it really comes back to understanding affinities and behaviors. And that's where AI can really be powerful. That's a lot of the work that I was actually doing as the Chief Digital Innovation Officer at Epsilon, using unstructured data, forming hypothesis, and moving beyond. In traditional marketing, there's what's called a persona, to where people equate, oh, this individual Chris has these specific behaviors, so obviously thousands of other people that look like Chris are going to respond in the same way. Mm-hmm. The reality is there are millions of different Chris's, each with their own affinities, each with their own behaviors, each at a different specific point. So it's taking and understanding those specific affinities that could be regional, that could be environmental, that could be individual, and applying that in a way to where you can truly understand, a new usage occasion or understanding kind of perception or whatever it may be for that individual. But it's about understanding the individual. And ultimately, I think we're going to get to a point where the individual owns their own data. That's where I think all of this is really going. You see what's happening in California, you see what's happening in Europe with the GDPR and privacy and protection of information. So I think at the end of the day, we're going to see that to where the consumers are actually in full control.
So yeah, you talk a lot about how AI isn't scary. AI isn't meant to, take over your job and ruin industries. It's really there to aid us. It's really there to enhance. You've talked about that a lot. Talk about that here a little bit, because I know that that's something that really was helpful when I first heard you say it. And I think a lot of people are going to hear that and say, oh, I get it now. It's not the enemy.
No, Chris, it's really not. I mean, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
that's where I like to talk a lot about Pixar movies and the Pixar theory. I normally like to ask the crowd and get interactive with them and ask, who likes Pixar movies? Who's heard of the Pixar theory? And the Pixar theory basically states that all movies that happen from the Pixar universe happen on a single timeline. And I like to use the movie The Incredibles as the first instance of when artificial intelligence is injected in the timeline. And, you look at Incredibles 2, the plan, and big spoiler alert here for the movie, in case anybody, I don't want to hear in the comments, like, oh, you just spoiled Incredibles 2 for me. Like, it's been out for a little while now. But like the fun part about like Incredibles 2 is the master plan is revealed, and it's not a hostile takeover. It's not about this like super AI intelligence. It wins by ease and convenience. So it's how can AI, how can systems make our lives easier? And I've done a lot of proprietary research across all of these generational cohorts. And the number one reason why people are willing to adopt new and emerging technology is if it makes their lives easier.
Easier.
Period. So you can see the appeal if you're able to have like computate millions of different things into one experience, like quickly for you on your behalf. It's hard to turn that down. Or so, just like you were talking about the example with the phone of being able to take and pause it, and still it's processing in the background. So yeah.
So give us another example though that you can remember that you like. That's it making it much more convenient for the consumer, and then it kind of revolutionized maybe that industry or that type of company. Give me an example of, wow, that really is an example of AI making everything so much easier. Because I think it's hard for people to see that example in their heads and remember that.
It is. So I'll start first with a brand example. So there was a vitamin company that we worked with, and they were continually losing market share, and they didn't understand why. So when we actually applied machine learning and went back in time, looking at all of the kind of historical information on the open web about them, and when we got through the responses of the models, it actually came down into a positioning shift. Before, they were talking about the benefits of ingredients. When they shifted towards energy, they started to lose market share. They started to lose a point of differentiation. So we were actually able to track back in time when this happened and write that so that they could actually begin, an upward trajectory in terms of revenue and results. So, but when it comes back to us, it's about if you and I were going to grab a cup of coffee, our virtual assistants could essentially work together in the background, pick a location, know any specific dietary restrictions, understand the flow of traffic, map that, coordinate, keep in communication with each other. If I happen to be running 5 minutes late, it would ping and let you know. That's where we're going. We're going to where the daily events of our lives are going to be managed or offloaded onto our proxy or our avatar-based, voice assistant, whatever it ultimately may be. And that'll always be with us. And that's going to be the key to unlocking whatever digital simulation, you walk into a specific store, you see something completely different than I would based on what your likes and affinities actually are.
Got it. So it's going to help us find things much easier and connect with each other much easier, and all of the busy work and the research work is going to be kind of X'd out because it'll immediately help us get to where we found what we're looking for.
That's right. And
how can a company take advantage? I mean, I would imagine that AI and data and doing the research of your industry and plugging that into your company, I imagine that's really expensive, right? I mean, like, can somebody who owns a car dealership do that?
Absolutely. So there are a number of third parties out there. I've worked with one that I love called Oculus 360 over the course of many years. And, we actually did some automotive-based work and did analysis. And the beautiful thing about the platform is whether you're talking about identifying incoming trends. So we were actually able to take, for a massive food company, they developed a number of products from pet food to rice. We were able to zero in on rice, identify some of the trends that were happening externally, and then innovate even on the e-commerce side. Normally, a product description doesn't change maybe once a year on an e-commerce site. But if you're able to take and identify what trends are currently popping in a specific thing, you can dynamically update that more regularly so that you have a higher chance of being discoverable, on the open web when people are actively searching or connecting. So, yeah.
Is it all about search? I mean, does everybody just need to win the search game?
No, search is just a foundational component. And the reason why I talk a lot about search right now, it's around the structured data. And if you're using Google, which is the primary search mechanism, it's about the Google Knowledge Graph. And so when we talk about Amazon, we talk about Google, we talk about who's ultimately going to win long term, my bet is honestly probably Google because of the knowledge graph, because their assistant is being educated based on all these other queries that are actively happening right now. And their ability to kind of predict what's going to happen versus the Amazon ecosystem, which is heavily product driven. Yes, they have a relevancy algorithm that basically can map different things to you based on your behavior. And ultimately they get better and better at refining it. But Google is also connected to that corpus of information. So over time, I think that is going to feed into how a lot of these experiences evolve. Mm-hmm. That's also why they're experimenting with other form factors. You're going to see over the next few years, you're seeing Facebook partner with Ray-Ban, you're seeing other entities. To me, I think the next natural progression is going to be the smart glasses that are going to be unveiled by Apple and other entities to continue to move beyond just the mobile device as the primary way in which we interface with technology. That's a big part about what we talk about as well. It's shifting away from us inputting into technology and how our environment adapts to us. Like, that's really where we're going. So it's less about you inputting into your phone and more about your world around you interfacing and reacting to you.
Yeah, the guy I just had on last episode was Dr. Daniel Kraft. He talked about the Apple glasses in healthcare and how that's going to help you see, maybe all the calories in your food or other data that's, that pop-up display that he talked about from the F-15 and 16, flying and having it be up here so your eyes aren't down on the buttons. And some of us have that on our cars, at least for the speed limit. So that's all coming. And it's going to come through our glasses. And is there somebody who's winning that race too? Is that Apple?
It's going to be a tight race. Apple's involved, Samsung is involved, Facebook is involved, Google is involved. Google, with Google Glass back in 2012, they took the first step forward. It was a bit more industrial. The part that missed was more of kind of the fashion component. So I ultimately think what will win out will be the smart contacts that basically map and project onto our retinas directly but you're going to have an in-between. And again, I talked at the very beginning how this is all about convergence. There are multiple steps and things that have to happen. You have to have ubiquity of 5G devices. 5G allows for the connection of millions and billions of sensors. That's going to help us get from the Internet of Things to autonomous things. You're going to need to have, some type of form factor that can connect. You're going to need to have some type of autonomous mapping of environments around us. So all of these things are going to be happening concurrently that are going to be driving towards we're about to embark on an amazing transition for how we live our lives, every day. We're going to be shifting towards more of a digital overlay and more towards kind of digital simulation. That's a lot of the matrix component of the enhanced section of my talk.
That's amazing. And I know you've also been working a lot with games and the gaming world, not the gambling world, but games, video games. That's a big, big deal. A lot of people still don't realize. And every time you remind me or I hear somebody else tell me how many more people are watching that than our beloved football or our beloved baseball or even the NBA. I mean, it's absolutely destroying most of that now, right? The e-games, and tell us how that, what does that mean for us as far as business is concerned? Like, is there something to learn there, or is it also coming into our mainstream everyday, like everybody will be touched by games?
There's a lot to unpack in that statement. To start, like, just on let's start on the entertainment side and the
Okay.
comparison. Most people are blown away by this. The music industry makes around $21 billion a year. When you start thinking of movies, that's roughly 43 billion. When you think of gaming, that is a $152 billion industry. So it's almost double of music and entertainment combined.
Wow.
So one example we like to use is, The Masked Singer, has roughly 7 million people watching or viewing a show.
Okay.
We had Travis Scott, the entertainer, in Fortnite with 27 million people watching him just all at the same time.
Wow.
It's unbelievable the amount of scale. In my talk, I always ask, how many people do you think watch the Super Bowl? So, it's a lot of people, right? It's 100 million people.
Yeah.
So, but watching a single esports final, there were 300 million people watching that globally. So when you start thinking about the size and the scale, you start thinking back again to Gen Z and kind of their behavior,
Right.
where YouTube is a remote control. It's all about creation. The role that gaming plays and understanding how a brand can actually connect authentically into that world is incredibly interesting.
So talk a little bit more about that, like the example of how you get into that world. Is that somewhere that every brand should be? Is that somewhere where every, mom and pop neighborhood store should be focusing on? I mean, why do we care?
At the beginning, it's really about organizations or entities that are really looking to scale, and specifically scaling like at retail, I think is a really important kind of connection point for a lot of organizations. There are a lot of ways you can play, pun intended,
Yeah.
in the gaming space. There's a sponsorship side if you just want to drive awareness, like esports. So you're talking about MLG, you're talking about Call of Duty League, you're talking about Overwatch League, all these other entities. You can have sponsorships, you can sponsor teams, you can sponsor individual players. That's one way forward. Where our team currently focuses is really on how can we connect a gaming IP with a brand to create some positive utility for a consumer. An example I have here is like this can of Monster Energy. On it, we have about 400 million of these cans worldwide, and that's Master Chief from the Halo Infinite video game that's on the can. There's a snap experience on the can that unlocks a new dynamic experience every month. So, and there are also some that are retailer specific. So you can create really amazing programs all just from a single can that traditionally just sits on the shelf. And so by aligning the game IP and by giving people, in this case, it's called 2XP, it's time. So it gives you double experience points for the time that you play.
Wow.
So that's creating kind of that authentic value for the consumer where they're getting something in exchange. So gaming, it's less about just the fact that, there are eyeballs. There are ways in which organizations and entities can really connect with consumers in a fun, unique, and exciting way that actually drives significant business value.
That is amazing. That's hard to wrap your head around when, especially if you're hearing this for the first time, it's almost like foreign talk, but this is something people need to really understand is happening right now. It's already here, and it's already surpassed. And it's like television advertising and, bus stop advertising and billboard advertising and, yellow page advertising is long gone, but it's like, it's all gone. Really, there should be no money put into any of those things, even billboards, right? Unless it's some kind of a augmented reality thing that you can do with your phone, which I'm sure is coming to the digital billboards as those become more. What's the most exciting thing to you? You're in marketing, you know where consumers' heads are at and where the biggest companies' heads are at as well. So what do you think is the most exciting thing that's coming that you're the most excited about?
For me personally, Chris, the thing I get the most excited about are experiences that are tied to really fun IP that I love. So, I'm a big fan of Star Wars. I love the kind of The Mandalorian and some of the things that are going on there. Anytime there's a way in which an experience can be created that kind of connects me more closely with whatever that property is. Or another example is I collect Funko Pops.
What?
So Funkos, the little pop culture, the little people here. Like we've got yep, there was one right there.
Is that what that is? What do you call it?
Yeah, they're Funko Pops.
Mm-hmm.
So they're
I
little.
have this is my little Tom Edwards friend. When I get lonely, I can always hang out with him, and if I just want to talk to you and you're not available, we can have a conversation.
There you go, my friend. That's it. That is it. And yeah, so but these
Well,
little
what are you talking about? So the Funko Pop, is that what it's called?
yeah, this is a Funko Pop. This is a game property coming up called Cyberpunk 2077. This is a pop of Keanu Reeves playing a character in the game. And one of the things that I'm super excited about is when I go shopping for these little guys. So I could walk into a retailer like a Target. And what I would love is that my personal assistant, which may be housed in my glasses, knows and understands that I love, Funko Pops, Star Wars, or certain entertainment IP. And it can immediately create a unique experience as I walk through the store to get to that specific location, or tell me that, it can unlock new and exclusive content or a discount or something along those lines.
Right.
I'm really excited to get to that point to where my personal affinities and preferences manifest in the real world, like as digital overlays.
And Instagram's doing a good job of that, right? Because I have talked about that with you and other people, where I was actually not upset that I was looking at Instagram. The only reason why I have an Instagram is for my company's Instagram. But I was, you inevitably you look through it and then these ads pop up. But it was like all of the ads were like nailing it, like for what I liked, the kind of clothing I like, or something to, do with the household, household item. And they're always like cool new inventions, like new products that I'd never even thought of or seen before. And I would always like, ooh, I got to save that. Ooh, I want to save. Now I have all these amazing things saved in there that I can go and buy when I feel like I want to look through them and say, oh, which one of these do I really need? Is any of this stuff I really need? Some of it, yeah. Some of it's like life-changing. I would not have found out about some of the best things I have if it wasn't for an Instagram ad that just popped up that somehow knew what I liked.
So think about that exact concept on your phone, and now think about that applying in your real physical space. So that's where we're going.
What do you mean my real physical space?
Yeah. So
I like my own private space. I don't want anything in my space.
I know you do, except for my pop. That's the only thing you got in your physical space.
The only thing on my desk, yeah.
I was gonna leave that one alone, but yeah. But in all reality, like that's what's going to be exciting to me.
People don't want things in their personal space, so sell me a little more on this.
Sure.
What do you mean by that?
So this is the idea. It's called like digital twin, right? So it's a trend, it's a concept to where you take something from the physical world and you recreate it digitally. So imagine that Instagram ad, instead of it being in your feed as like an ad on your phone,
right?
That's something then that can actually manifest in your real world based on whatever heads-up display that you have. But it's something that you opt into to have shown to you. So again, it's more about I know you love music and I know you love drumming. And so like, if there's some really cool nuanced way that you can show a new drum set or something really kind of interesting to kind of wrap and exist, however that would work, that's what you would see in full scale in front of you. Like
randomly, like if I'm just like typing, all of a sudden a drum set appears over here?
No, it's going to be associated. So how I see it happening, and when I'm talking to other entities and organizations, there's a handshake that's going to happen when you walk into a retail space.
Oh.
So at some point, if you're going into a space or an area, and that's how a lot of experiences are going to be mapped moving forward, it's going to be less about location, and it's going to be based on like the experiences that are available in a given area in a certain radius. So you walking into a certain area that has an association with your love of music plus this can then form that. So the retail space could be completely devoid of physical product. It would be like white walls, but you're seeing what you want to see manifest right there.
And then you could kind of try it on, or you could, kind of I heard somebody say they, bought a tent by like literally, I don't know, they used an Oculus and they went in the tent and they could see how big it was. They're like, yeah,
Exactly.
that's the right size. But that's going to be like you're saying on the glasses, even like the glasses you're wearing. And ultimately, I remember Michio Kaku saying like 10 years ago, the contacts. And I just keep on hearing contacts. Because when I heard him say that, I was like, yeah, right, buddy. I don't know many people are going to want put a, contact in their eye, but it seems like it's like happening. It's going to happen, and if you want it, you can have it. Otherwise, you can wear glasses. So okay, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, think about the social stigma tied to kind of Bluetooth headsets, but then look at what Apple did with the AirPod, and now everyone's walking around with AirPods in their ears. So it's less about the technology and more about who's going to do it in a way that makes people want to adopt it and there almost has to be some type of cachet associated with it. So right now, Samsung's working on a smart contact. University of Washington is working on it. I like to follow patents. So when I'm looking at emerging technology, I look at who's filing what patents. I like to look at kind of developer documentation, like anything that's coming out that's publicly available, really digging into that. And that's how I can kind of connect different use cases. I've got a technology background. So understanding the nuances of that combined with the behavior and the marketing side is how you can really build connections for what's coming. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of just a little behind the scenes look at how that kind of comes together.
And and I think both of the movies I mentioned at the very top, Machine and Social Dilemma, I always want to say Social Distortion, and I know it's Social Dilemma, but they talk a little bit about how do we fix this problem. And I know I'm going back to social media now, but it kind of ties in with the AI and everything. Is there are these companies talking about, like the Googles and the Amazons and the everybody else, Apple and everybody, are they talking a little bit at least about how do we make this more of a positive, healthy, beneficial experience as far as like when these things do pop up and we go in, we opt in and we go into the white room and the products come out? Are they gonna at least, or are we gonna have to dictate to them, we don't want anything unless it's healthy or benefits me, in my business or my family? Like, how do we get it so that there's no crap anymore and there's no more wasted, false information or untruths and fake news, but also like things that are just unhelpful to us? Like, is there that conversation going on? It must be.
There are a lot of conversations going on, and there's a lot of experimentation happening in place right now, especially leading up to kind of the election. You're seeing kind of on Instagram, kind of the removal of hashtags for a little bit leading up to it. So trying to try different methods of doing that. And there are multiple camps on that, where people are praising it and people are saying that's censorship. So I think it's less about the technology companies dictating that, and it's more about us as individual consumers opting into the areas in which we are interested in kind of interacting with. And that's where, again, at the onset of this, I was talking about how the consumer needs to take more control over the information that they share, over the information on how then that's translated into the experiences that they receive, more transparency around how third parties actually use data. There does need to be more kind of support for individual rights around data and information. But I do ultimately think that it needs to be the individual's kind of ability to choose.
Absolutely. And it seems like there may be some companies that might emerge. This might be a business opportunity for companies that can actually be the ones that you use to get your information or get your marketing that you want to have marketed to you. In other words, you've told them how you want to see things, and then you're paying a little bit extra because maybe these freebie services aren't really worth the kind of saturation that we're getting of negativity or falsehoods or waste of time. That Facebook is kind of like, oh, we don't care what they're looking at. We just want them to look at it. But if we say we'll pay a little bit extra to have, company AYZ give us this kind of stuff, at least we know that it's going to be stuff that we should look at, or we will benefit us, or that we want to look at, right? I mean,
yeah, no, I agree 1,000%. There are like identity resolution firms out there that provide an alternative. One that I know of very well is Full Contact. So that's a group that's focused on transparency and innovation around identity resolution. So I know they're doing a lot of work in that kind of space to help drive that forward for sure.
Amazing. And do you have any opinions on blockchain and how that's coming into the business world? I don't know if that's something you normally talk about or
Yeah.
get into, but
No,
it is data. It does protect data, right? And it is AI a little bit, right? How does that
well,
come into play?
blockchain's more about, it's basically ledger technology that provides transparency. And it can be incredibly transformational in certain industries, like specifically healthcare and electronic medical records. Like there's a lot of work right now in terms of multiple entities that are basically creating almost like a co-opt where they're sharing information into a specific instance of blockchain that they're able to then authenticate or find, information that may need to be updated or not quite correct. So in those instances, it can be amazingly transformational, like healthcare, financial services, and other areas. When you think about blockchain technology, though, it is specific to certain industries, certain use cases.
Right.
It's not necessarily like a social network. I do believe at some point there will be, whether it's based on blockchain or other some type of open ledger technology, that my goal would be that as an individual, I would ultimately want to control and be able to monetize my own data and information. So in essence, using blockchain or using some other mechanism that, if people want to advertise to me, why pay a third party, monetize the individual to where you, Chris, or me, I'm choosing who to be marketed to, but I'm also receiving the benefit versus it going to a third party. So I think in that way, that's something that I've really been interested in for a long time. And I also see digital rights management as like the next $1 billion industry. You think about, music rights and all these other things. Think about open air rights. Think about, okay, you are in a physical location and it is digitized. If you're inside of Taco Bell, that immediately becomes a Burger King. Like, how is that going to be facilitated and regulated? So if I had it all to do over again, I'd go back to law school and focus on digital rights management heading into the next decade.
Right. That's very interesting to think about. Wow. Well, so basically, you're pretty excited about the future. The consumer is going to be benefited by all of this technology, and really any company can benefit from this, big or small. Obviously, you're working with the biggest companies on the planet doing this. So, man, that's just so much information that you just gave us about so many different things that are coming and that are here. It's a lot to unpack, and it's definitely worth rewinding and looking at it again, especially if you have a business or you're in a leadership position where you can utilize this stuff. Because I think a lot of people are just kind of sitting there and their competition's doing it and they're going to be left behind, right?
Chris, that's honestly the first step. A lot of what I do when I give a talk to a certain audience, I'll look at a specific industry, kind of align their specific industry case studies into the discussion so it's really relevant to them, whether financial services, automotive, CPG, retail, telco, whatever it ultimately is, like, because there is so much, but there are certain foundational elements that are true across industries and across behavior. And it's really important. The number one thing is just really education and having a baseline, understanding the core terminology of just what's even happening at a high level. We can keep it at 100 level course all the way through to a doctoral thesis discussion around these technologies. So the beautiful thing of getting to work with you is you're able to kind of discern against audience and these other pieces. And I can actually create a custom talk specific to industry that can really help people understand, how they should be thinking about the application of technology to their business and how to enhance, the end experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you really are the very best at what you do. There's nobody else who really talks about this stuff and really is doing it. That's the other thing. A lot of people talk about it. You're actually doing it, and you're actually seeing it develop in front of you. You're working with companies to develop it and to utilize it. And it's amazing. So, dude, thank you so much for doing this. This has been, I love talking to you because I always learn so much and get so excited about the future. So this was very entertaining. And packed with a lot of great information. So thank you so much for doing this, Tom. That was awesome.
Chris, anytime, my friend. I mean, there's so many topics we can touch on, but yeah, we're just scratching the surface. But I always enjoy the time with you.
Yeah, me too, man. Likewise. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will be seeing you soon, sir. Take care.
All right, Chris, have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.